Hey there, and welcome to exercise number 87. If you want to solve this exercise on your own, then click on the link in the description. If not, keep watching, and we're going to solve it together. In this one, we need to write a function named delayResolve that receives two parameters. The first one is a promise that will definitely resolve, and we're going to call this one promise. The second parameter is a number of milliseconds that we're going to call millis. Now, the function should return a new promise that will resolve with the same value as our promise parameter, but not sooner than milliseconds have passed. Now, in other words, if the promise parameter resolves sooner than milliseconds, then we need to wait at least until, again, milliseconds have passed, and then we're going to resolve it. Below we have an example. So I have here a promise that will resolve immediately. And you can see here I create it using the promise constructor. I pass it a function and I simply resolve 100. So the value is 100. Then I'm going to call delayResolve and I'm going to pass it this promise and the number 1000. So this represents 1000 milliseconds, which is equal to 1 second. Then I await for it to finish. I get the value, so the resolved value, and I console log it. And here, as you can see in the comment, this should print the number 100, but after 1 second, so not immediately. Now that we've read the description, let's go into the right side into the code area and solve it. And I actually have two solutions for you. Now the first one is going to be more, let's say, classical in approach. Is going to be a lot of code, but I highly encourage you to look until the end and you're going to see the second solution, which is much more interesting. So the first solution is kind of straightforward. We need to keep track of how much time it takes to resolve this promise. So I'm going to return a new promise here. And inside, I'm going to keep track of the current time. So I'm going to say now is date.now. Then I'm going to wait for this promise to finish. This one is going to be finished with a value. And then I'm going to check if the current time minus the time when it started is at least millis, then I'm just going to resolve this value. Otherwise, I need to store it so I can resolve it later. So here I'm going to create a variable called stored value, and I'm going to do here an else that's going to say stored value is equal to value. Now, if we're in this second case, then I also need to resolve this promise after milliseconds have passed. So I'm going to create a timeout here, set timeout. That's going to run after milliseconds, and it's going to check if stored value is different than undefined. So if this one resolved before and I have a value here, I'm going to resolve it. Right? So basically, if this promise finishes after milliseconds, I just resolve the entire function. I mean, the entire promise returned by this function. If it resolves sooner, then I store the value and I resolve it when this timeout ends. And by the way, let me not forget to export this function here. And now we can test it. So let me take this code and I'm going to put it here. And we should see 100 printed with 1 second delay. And to test it, let's just do console log now so we can see the difference. So now was printed at, you see, 0.9 seconds and this one at 10 seconds. So 1 second difference. Now let's put 2 seconds difference. This one 20 and then 22. So you can see it works. Now, the problem with this code is that it's highly, imperative. So you have to check timestamps manually, verify which one finishes first, which one finishes after. So it's a lot of work and we can do it smarter with less code. So let me actually delete all this and show you the second method, which I like more. In this second method, we're going to use the promise.all function. So promise.all receives an array of promises and it will resolve when all of them resolved. So I'm going to pass it the first promise, and then the second promise is going to be a promise that resolves after milliseconds. So I'm going to say new promise of resolve and I have a callback, and here I'm going to do a timeout that runs after millisecond and it just calls resolve, right? So this is our promise, and this is a promise that simply resolves after milliseconds have passed. Now, by using promise all and by knowing that promise all finishes when all of them finished, then I am assured that this finishes after at least milliseconds have passed, because I have it here in the timeout. So if, let's say, promise resolves after 100 milliseconds and this one is 500, well, this one is going to resolve in 100, this one in 500, promise all is going to resolve in 500. It waits for both. If, on the other hand, this one resolves in 1000 and this is 500, well, this one is going to resolve last, this one is going to resolve first, but we wait for this one to finish, so again the condition is met. So here I can say .then, and this one gives me an array of results, but I actually care about the first one. This is the result of my promise. I don't have any result here, so I'm going to do return results of 0. And if you look here in the console, you see it works. So I have this one at second 43, this one at second 45. Let's do it 2500, this one at 56, and this one at 58, but again, there's like 500 should be between them. Let's do 3 seconds. So 03, and this one should be 06. Okay, it works. So this is the second method, which I like more, and it's much more imperative, and it uses promise all, because we know that promise all waits for all of them to finish. So by using it, I am assured that this promise resolves at least after millis have passed. So I don't have to do differences to keep the timestamps. I don't have to do any of that. And I think this code is much more simpler to understand and to read, so I like this version much more. Now, this being said, let me test the solution. And drum rolls, exercise successfully completed. So it works. Cheers, and see you in the next one.